But as the Ukraine story heats up, it looks like the Biden campaign is trying to make sure that the New York Times gets on board. They came out with a strongly worded letter against the paper for daring to publish an op-ed that was written by Peter Schweizer, who will join us in a moment. He has investigated the Bidens and other politicians on both sides of the aisle whose families appear to possibly have cashed in on their elected positions, and he investigates that. In response to that op-ed in the New York Times by Peter Schweizer, the Biden campaign came out swinging. They said, "We write to protest how little the Times has internalized the sobering lessons of 2016, particularly after giving top billing to a discredited right-wing polemicist, Peter Schweizer. Are you truly blind to what you got wrong in 2016? Or are you deliberately continuing policies that distort reality? After the glaring mistakes of 2016, the Times has again given an underhanded hack the validation of its platform." Strong words. Peter Schweizer is president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of the book Secret Empires. Peter, good to have you with us this evening. I guess my first question for you is, were you surprised at all that the New York Times, agreed to publish your piece?
No, actually not. In fact, Martha, the New York Times reached out to me to write the piece for them. I've written for them in the past, and they've always been very fair. And, we do vigorous fact-checking, of course, at the Government Accountability Institute. And every word in that op-ed was fact-checked by the New York Times as well. So I'm thankful that they wrote it. The Biden reaction is not a surprise because their entire strategy on this, Martha, has been to attack me to generate a lot of heat, but no light. They've not answered any serious questions about this at all with any journalists.
All right. As you know, their claim is that it has been long investigated. It is dead as a doornail. There's nothing there to look at, and that you're just digging into it for political reasons.
Yeah, well, Secret Empires, the book in question, came out in March of 2018, #1 New York Times bestseller. It looks at people on both sides of the aisle. We've got information in there on the Bidens, McConnell-Chow family. We have information in there on the Trump family. So we looked at both sides of the aisle. Yeah. The Biden material, though, is particularly troubling because it had never been exposed before. The number of deals and the size of the deals that Hunter Biden had in China had never been exposed before. So the notion that this has been looked into, I would challenge them to show us who has looked into this. Nobody's looked into it. And it's the oldest story in politics, Martha. Follow the money. And I think people need to know who is enriching our politicians, whether it's, a local business in their district or a foreign government like the Chinese government.
Yeah, I want to ask you about the Chinese government, but I do want to ask you to also respond to this Daily Beast piece that came out tonight, which says that you lifted certain passages in your book from WikiLeaks. I looked at these. In my mind, they seem to be very general information in terms of these comparisons. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Look, anything that I publish, just out of an abundance of caution, I always take through plagiarism software to make sure there's not even any questions. We did that with Secret Empires. We did that with Clinton Cash. The examples that they cite, Martha, are absurd. One of them is I have a passage about Mayor Daley of Chicago, and I said, Mayor Daley of Chicago wept at a press conference. They said that I lifted that from somebody who reported the same thing. If I'd said that Mayor Daley cried at the press conference, they probably could have found somebody who wrote that as well. Look, it's very clear, Martha, their strategy is we do not want to talk about Hunter. We do not want to talk about these foreign deals. We want to try to talk about Peter Schweizer. And honestly, I'm a pretty boring guy. And what's far more important is to focus on these issues, and the Bidens simply don't want to answer any questions about them.
All right. Well, I want to ask you about the China story, because there's been so much focus on the Ukraine part of the story, and I watched a piece that you were interviewed in about this, and I found it very interesting. It talks about Hunter Biden partnering with a Chinese company, a member of which then got sort of knotted up in this nuclear espionage plot. Is there any connection between those two things that you found? Did Hunter Biden have any connection to this person?
We don't know. Here's what we know. We know that Hunter Biden joined the board of directors of this Chinese fund that, according to their own website, has more than $2 billion under management. and they've invested in a number of companies. One of them, Martha, is a company called CGN, China General Nuclear. It's an atomic power company in China, and that company, shortly after the Biden firm, where he was on the board of directors, invested in them, senior executives from that company were arrested by the FBI. This is public record, and they were arrested for trying to steal nuclear secrets in the United States related to small nuclear reactors that had military application. So this is all a matter of fact. And this is one of the reasons that the Bidens, again, don't want to answer and have not answered any questions about this, because it's not just about self-enrichment. It's about my belief that the Chinese chose Hunter Biden for this job, the board of directors. They brought him in because they felt it would be helpful for them in some of the acquisitions they wanted to make, including companies in the United States that are involved in dual-use technologies that have civilian and military application.
Well, I have to go, but just quickly, if you can, was the FBI investigating the firm, the Chinese firm, when he was put on that board? Is there an overlap between those two things?
To be clear, they were investigating one of the companies that the investment firm Hunter was on the board of had invested in. So they were investigating the company. Absolutely. Hunter Biden's firm was an owner of CGN, and then CGN was investigated by the FBI, and one gentleman pled guilty in that case.
All right. Peter Schweizer, thank you very much. Good to have you here tonight.
Thanks, Martha.